Welcome back to the Nullified Tag channel here on YouTube. As you can see, I've got one of the legends, one of the great players of Australian Survivor, arguably one of the biggest players to ever play internationally, Survivor, Luke Toki here with me today on the channel. Luke, how you doing?
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate catching up again.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's been about a year since the last time we spoke. You've been busy since then as well. You've started your own thing as well. Tell people a little bit about what you're doing with Dave Gannett at the moment.
Yeah. So look, me and Dave, obviously, because we're both in Perth, we hang out and talk a lot. We had a chat to another friend which works in the digital field, and we thought we'd just get together and I guess interview a few of the locals and the Perth side, just I guess really just to have some fun, hang out, talk about some topics, very controversial topics, and run our own podcast, which was we've just finalized the first season for a little bit. We're taking a pause. Dave's gone to New York, and we're going to come back for another season. So it's been a lot of fun, to be honest. That's been
I've been listening. I've been listening. Yeah, definitely. I've been following. I'm a like when I say you're my favorite Survivor player of all time for Australia specifically as well. That's 100% true. So I've been following what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think you're underselling the podcast. To be honest, it's a lot of fun. Like if people enjoy the dynamic of yourself and Dave and how you were out on the island in Champions vs Contenders 2, how you interacted. If you want to see that play out on a podcast, then definitely go check out who authorized this on YouTube as well. And I'll put links on the channel as well for this video afterwards, so people can go look it up, because I think it's golden.
I think me and Dave, we've always had a good back and forth, and I think we both bring two different views, and the way we just we're a little bit different, but we have similar thoughts.
Yeah, that's great. I think you guys bounce off each other really well. But obviously, you would have seen this week we had a podcast on with Shannon Gus, who you've podcasted with before. You did the Talking Tribal show with her not that long ago, and we spoke about International Survivor and the potential of there being like a crossover Survivor. And both of us thought, you would have to be one of those locks that whoever is going to do the show, they'd have to reach out to the King of the Jungle, the People's Champion, and now also a Big Brother winner as well. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So if the call ever came for an international crossover season, is this something that you'd be interested in? Because I know a lot of people they do the game. You've done it twice. Have you moved on from it, or is this still one of those instances where you'd be wanting to go out there and prove yourself again? Not that you have to prove yourself, but against some of the best, I guess.
Yeah, look, I definitely would go back. It's even if it wasn't to potentially make a big drastic change of in my gameplay, or if you weren't going to see nothing different, I definitely feel just the experience of mixing it up with some other countries, and I've always given it my all. So I think when it comes to the challenges and comes to the gameplay, and I'm really curious is who would turn on their own country first, and that's would offer a massive dynamic change, personally and just like morally, and just who would stick if it suited your game. Would you turn on your own country? That's the big question. I feel like when it comes to Survivor, and I know it's an individual game, but I think when it comes to country versus country, you represent your country, you go out there and you that would be the worst thing ever, turning against someone. So what I'm saying is, of course I'd play, of course I would come in guns a-blazing like usual and give everything my 100%. And look, in the end, I think I would mainly do it for the fans. I'm always kind of trying to do these moves and have a good crack at the game and stuff, purely because I know what the viewer would be like at home sitting through a 2-hour episode and nothing happens. So I just, look, why not? I think Survivors, I think I said it in my podcast, I think it's just in my blood now, it's giving me too much. It's giving me too much. Any time I can try to repay the favor, I always will, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I know for a fact that, you know, when myself and Shannon spoke about it, we said the USA probably wouldn't know a lot. Like, there's like the majority of their fans wouldn't know all the international players, but
Yeah.
at least for Survivor South Africa, I know talking to fans all the time in South Africa, they know who Luke Toki is, they know who Dave Gannett is. They're big fans of the Australian franchise, so I think the fans would love seeing the likes of yourself, like a Dave Gannett, and so forth in it. And Dave being like one of the people that I felt really bad afterwards. We didn't have him in the, and like we were like, how can we not have him in the cast? But we ended up with yourself, Pia, Sarah Tilike, Dirty Harry, Sam, and then Sam Gash, and then we're like, how can we put David in there as well? Because, you know, Luke and David would just be too well connected in such a cast. Who would you like if you had to choose someone outside of David, and it was someone that wasn't one of those names that I just mentioned? Who would you like to see, like boy and girl, side by side with you, taking on some of these other countries?
Oh my God!
I know there's a lot. It's hard to choose like one or two people, but who do you think would be interested?
Look, I think to be interested, I think look, I think you've got to cover these three. As much as there's some good players out that I love, that you know, if you're gonna do it, you have to stack the card, as you said, individually. So there needs to be someone that is going to match very well with me, and it's going to have to be on the physical side as well. So you can't have an Olympic team with one bad swimmer.
Yes.
For instance. So if you're going to do it, it needs to be 6 of the best. And it can't just be, you know, 6 of the best strategically. It has to be 6 of the best physically, I think, personally. So it has to be 3 strong women and 3 strong men. Or you can, if you're going to do it, but you have to match it right. So you have to sit there and go, okay, King George, strategically great, you know, but when it comes to challenges, probably not as strong as some of the other guys you could chuck out there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you've got to match George. If you're going to put him on, you're going to have to match him with someone. So, but when you really just put it down to, okay, the best of the best, you have to put you want the challenges of seeing a strong, say for instance, okay, back in the day you put a strong, so Boston Rob was great, you know, back in the day, say for instance, but you know, young Boston Rob against the young, say for instance, young me or young Dave or young Lockie or young Harry Strong, everyone, like someone that's like I would like look, and on top of it, then you got to add, I guess, who's had the most, who you'd be really excited, I guess, to see. Look, I'd be excited to see someone like George. Like Haley's a beast. Brooke, you know, Flick goes hard. Abby goes hard. I think there's a lot really we can choose from. It's and that's just the women. Like the guys, like I'd love to see Matt Wahlberg play again.
Do you think he would?
Over in yeah, I don't know. I think he's kind of moved on from that. But I just, you know, when you bring in a world season, if you're just going to look at who's stuck with, look, if I had to pick Australia, you want to give us some real names that I can just throw some mud at. I reckon who would be great is, look, winners. Yeah, you could definitely go Pia. I think that she's pretty switched on, you know, when it comes
balanced.
to look, but then Sam Gash is, I don't know, Sam and Pia, you could probably flip a coin for them. I think both of them, you know, cover the strategic, very social and pretty cutthroat as well. So I think both of them could be a flip the coin because they're both the same build and size, you know. I think Mark's just won. Look, you know, Mark's just won. So
Mark said he would, like I had a chat with Mark when he won the season. Super nice guy. He said he'd only come back if it's an all winners international season. He wants Sam to come back rather. That's what he told me. I mean, he might have changed his mind now. Like, you know, after you finish the game, you know, you don't always want to go back immediately, but a year or two later, maybe that bug bites you again and you want to go out there again.
You think about any sport, when it comes to sports or competing in something, people retire 4 or 5 times, you know, and they're like, nah, I'm done. And then give it 2 years, they get the itch back and they go back again. And as well, when the opportunity arises, say for instance, but look, I can't.
What do you think of Dave? Do you think Dave would be interested? Do you think if the best of the best were to go out there, Dave is someone that I think a lot of people think maybe he's moved on from Survivor as well. But do you think if there was this challenge out there, international franchises taking each other on, that's something that would get him out of retirement potentially? You're closer to him than anybody else, so you probably have a bit of an idea.
Yeah, look, I think he'd definitely consider it. I think that, which I was going to get at is, you know, even if Mark's saying a winners season international or whatever, it's like you say it off the cuff because, you know, it's the time when everyone can change their mind after you rethink it, and especially when an opportunity arises. So, you know, once if you check your inbox in the morning and it says, "Hey, do you want to come back and play South Africa versus Australia?" And it's going to be broadcast, you know, say forever, and it falls around these dates, and you check your dates, and there's nothing in those dates. You know, you sit there
hard to say
and
no.
well, you think very hard, especially if you, in your head the answer was no before you got that email. But if I think about people that I'd want to align with, I'd kind of want to align with, I guess, Australians that don't want to bend, you know, don't want to fold and want to stick together as a group and come out with, you know, 6 Australians as the top 6 left standing in the game. You know, that's how but then all of a sudden I'd get out there and I'd change my mind and flip on them straight away. Like, I don't know, you know?
It'd be exciting to see. And myself and Shannon spoke about how you would make this season so it's harder to stay country specific, because at some point you'd want different people to intermingle. You'd love to see a Luke Toki next to a Boston Rob or a Legs. You know, I know you spoke to Legs not that long ago on your own channel. Or you'd like to see a Luke Toki and a Chappies, for instance, talk to each other out on the island, which I think would be exciting.
That would interest me a lot. Look, personally, I think if they're going to run it back, I think leave the OGs as the OGs. You know, we all, as much as I give like a little bit of jokes here and there, you know, all the OGs from America, and as I think it was Jeff said, he wasn't going to bring anyone past the top 20 seasons back. They need to be, you know, I think just, you know, put to rest as the OGs now, and I don't think bringing them back would be the greatest idea. I think that for the show to move forward and the show to evolve, I think that there's so much names and talent that you could bring back. Like, even though some of them played All-Stars like Wendell, Dom, you know, I'm sure there's a few other players you can grab from there. But as you said, Chappies, I think bring the new blood in, do an international season like that. That way you're kind of getting everyone that isn't 50, you know, or 60, like it's kind of, and with, say, 5-6 shows under their belt, I think there's enough talent pool to run a new age international season, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense, because I think that a lot of the OGs would struggle to, and this is no disrespect to them. I mean, they made the game that we all love, and you ended up playing in Australia because it was built on the backs of those people. But I feel like now physically it would be tough for them to compete, especially if Australian Survivors Challenge team gets a hold of the season and they actually develop the challenges that you're going to be doing out there. I think Australian Survivors
they make
some of the most
tough.
physical.
A few mud challenges, rolling up logs. I don't know. Look, there's people that do it. Look, I get it. There's still, you know, there's always a bit of fuel in the fire for the old boys. Like, we had ET, Matt Rogers. I'm not saying they're super old, but, you know, they're around the 50s and stuff, and they put it in. And, you know, I think it's just the way I look at it. I think that, you know, I would have been, you know, say, for instance, 5 years old or 10 years old when I was watching some of these people play. So I think that, and then when they did the Winners at War, I think that it's always good to evolve. I think that they should be brought in the crowd as more like a, as in, we're lucky to meet them, if that makes any sense. So, like, as in, there's been a great season of international people, and then they are brought in as the reunion, and we get to, like, hang out with them, because, like, it'd be an honor, I guess, for Australians and stuff to just meet them. I know that a lot of people, they do Hearts for Reality, and some people make it over America, but I can't just leave Australia to go gallivanting around the country and continents to do events all the time.
Yes.
But I would love to meet him, like
Yeah.
how cool would that be? Like I'd be a big fanboy. But I just think that I just love to see, I think it makes sense to put
Yeah.
someone like Dom in there that would probably be hungry. I think he hasn't had a second. Oh no, he did. No, he hasn't had a second.
He
shot.
hasn't had a second shot. And for me, I'm
Dude,
such a big Dom fan. And, he's going to be doing a different show called The Challenge. He's going on The Challenge before he even gets to play Survivor again. But I do have a question for you, since you mentioned some of the newer players that you'd like to see. I know that with the newer Survivor, it's been hard to keep up with some of the later seasons that's happened. But there's been some fundamental changes to the game. How do you feel about the fact that the US Survivor now only has to survive for half the time that the Australian Survivor has to be out there? It's only a 26-day game now. Jeff is selling it as a lot more difficult to be out there for 26 days without food. Do you think there's truth to this, or do you think this would make the US players less prepared for what is ahead, going up against some of the hardened players internationally that have got 39 days out there or 50 days out there?
Look, I think they try to palm it off as it's faster pace, if that makes any sense. So it's faster pace, so you have to think on your feet, you have to make quick decisions, rash decisions, and which makes the game harder and whatever. But I think if you put a poll to all the OGs, a lot of the OGs, they're the people that have played a lot. I've spoken to one or two of them, and they've even said, they're like, I'd much rather play 26 days than 50. It's sometimes it's not just the fact that you are fed less, which hopefully that's the case. Sometimes one of the biggest struggles in playing Survivor is not having any no contact with home and just being stuck somewhere. So if you look at the have you ever watched the show Alone? Yeah, and when you get down your numbers, you go from 12 down to shorter numbers. When the numbers start becoming like smaller and smaller, and you start feeling more raggedier, your clothes are starting to get more worn. A lot of them, they'll be looking in the camera going, I'm not right in the head. Like things are getting a bit rough for me. And if you speak to ask Mark, same story. When you get down to those deep parts of the game, when there's 4 or 5 people, the way you think is a little bit different to the way you think when there's top 4 and top 5. Things start getting a bit more emotional. And I know it's because the money's getting a bit closer and stuff, and a lot more is on the line. But it's also for the fact that you just have not had any communication at home. You're feeling, you're skinnier. You've gone from, at the point of 29 days, if I played that game, at 50 days I lost 14 kilos. If I played a 28 game or 28-day game or whatever, I would have been probably 7 kilos.
Yeah. So it's the physical toll on your body, it's the mental toll on your body. Plus, I look at a player like you, Luke. You're a player that loves to make moves. So I feel like playing a 26-day game would play in your hand, because one of the biggest, I feel like, struggles, that's why Dave Gnutt's game is such a unique game, because he's an explosive player like yourself. It doesn't really suit that gameplay in Australian Survivor. It actually suits a slower gameplay, I feel like, because you can't make too big of a target of yourself too early because it's a marathon. So I feel like your gameplay probably would suit a 26-day game more.
Yeah. And obviously I think it, you do have a lot of time. Look, not heaps of time, because the game does still move, even though it's a 50-day game. I can't really comment too much because I haven't played a 28-day game. So, and other than watching it on TV and hearing about it, that's my only, way I can speak about it. But I don't want to be that person, be like, the 28 days easy, and then I go there and get voted out first, and then I'm like, well, that didn't work out. I've talked it up. The one thing I know that I can do, and I feel like, which I have said, is, you find your people, and you find the people that you want to work with, and as much as I make these moves and do stuff and whatever, it's always still about the social game and being still loyal to your group. Like, you take your groups you know, sometimes your groups can change and it can alter and move around a little bit. It is a bit of a social game still. Like, I think with the 50-day game, it does work in my factor as well, because it is a long game. People start getting on each other's nerves a little bit, where I don't like to think that I get on people's nerves at all. You know, I don't think people are never really whinging about me going, oh, he's eating too much rice, or he's not getting enough wood, or he's not helping with the shoulder. Like, there's some very basic things to get voted out on. I think when you're playing a game that people are getting bothered with that, there's some inexperience in the game that you would vote someone out that gets more wood and one doesn't, because that's not going to help you in the game, you know?
No. So even though the fans would love to see Operation Night Rice meet Chappie's Diner at nighttime, it would be a difficult thing to pull off with a bunch of players that are seasoned and know what the game is about, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, look, in the end, most people just want to go out there and still have a good experience. But when it comes to an international game, I definitely feel like there'll be some rivalry there. Like, I love Chaps, but I would not take a backward step on him. You know what I mean? Like, I would hope that he doesn't do the same, which that is why it has to happen. Like, it has to, you know, like, it's like having Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson, you know, that are just, and I'm not saying I'm Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson, but it's the idea of, like, Survivor's at 42 seasons now in America. There's, you know, we're at
9 seasons. Eight and 9, I think. For South Africa's 9, and you're at 8 or 9 as well.
Yeah. So we're getting up there. Like, we've got some people. Like, I would love to see, you know, some of the girls from South Africa tackle some of the girls in Australia and America. I think and it's just like, look, I don't know what the challenge is like, but it seems like there's do you know what? I actually need to look into it, because I've been told 100 times to check it out. But I feel that there's so much there that just as countries uniting, for a good thing, for something which is a healthy challenge, and it's, you know, it's about taking us back to the point where it's about resilience and hardship and friendships and mending friendships. I just think, do you know what? It would be good on a level where I think just as people, you know, just as the regular household going, and if there's people that have, you know, you might know one South African, say for instance, and you're Australian, you might only know one, and you might not like him and go, man, these South Africans got a bit of attitude, you know? Yeah. And then you see the game and you could hate all the Australians and love all the South Africans. Like,
could happen.
Yeah, it definitely could happen. And and obviously, and I think the biggest thing, as I said, to go back, is which person, will it be a fan favorite, or will it be a villain that represents their country, that turns on their own country? Can you imagine if you had, all right, who's an Australian villain? Who would you say is the worst Australian villain?
I think that the public perception of that would be Sam Gash, even though I know she's nice in real life, you know, and that the fans just didn't understand the game move she made. But she's probably the Johnny Fairplay level of villain now there. But I think Sam would go down with the ship with Australia. I just think that's the type of person she is. So I don't think she'll necessarily be the person to turn her back. But now, if you said a dirty Harry,
put this idea out here. Put this idea right here, right? Me and Sam go play Tuasunga family members, you know? Yes. And Sam's known to be the person that's, you know, would do the dirty. And so, and I'm the fan favorite, right? Imagine we go play and everyone thinks Sam's going to be the one that turns on Australia, and I do.
Yeah. Well, would you still be the people's champion, Luke, if that happened? Do you think the people will still love you?
To be honest, I don't know if I would be, but I just, you know, it's just the what ifs. There's so many what ifs.
Yeah. And I think that it's intriguing because Australia and South Africa have played rugby union against each other for years and years. So there's that rugby and cricket rivalry. So it's very
Exactly.
familiar between Australia and South Africa. So I think worst case scenario, if it doesn't happen with the US included at some point, it definitely would happen between South Africa and Australia. But I do hope that we can get the OG US season involved because there's so many great players I'd love to see rub shoulders with you out there on the island.
Oh, of course, yeah. And it's the Australia, the Wallabies versus the Springboks.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, because I played rugby most of my life, so that's definitely a healthy competition there.
Yeah, that's why I'd love to have Matt Rogers in there because he used to play for the Wallabies at some point, so he'd have that extra grunt. But I don't know if I want to put him against the South African boys.
He would definitely if he had a win, he would be rubbing it in. He'd be like, First I got you on the field, and now I'm getting you on the beach. You know, so
yeah.
Where do you reckon they should play it then? If they were to run a season, where do you reckon?
I think it has to be, like Shannon said, she'd love to see it in Australia. I reckon it has to be a neutral spot. I said it would be really good to go back to where Survivor started in Borneo. I think it would be really cool to go back to the OG location if possible. Where were you in both times? Was it Samoa? Both times that you played?
Samoa and then Fiji. So Fiji, I think's become like before obviously COVID. I'm pretty sure one of the beaches there was definitely a season played before us, which I think it might have been an American season because you could just see it was being stripped a little bit all the way down the beach. But I definitely and it's the same trails. It'd be potentially. I would like. Look, I don't know the logistics about the whole thing, but I do like. Look, to be honest, if I had to put my money on, I like Samoa, the Samoa beach that Asunga played at. I'm telling you, there was something about it that something about that. It's just it's got a freshwater river running down the middle of it. Where it's all nice and fresh water. Then the tide comes in and it's got this reef that all the every time the tides go in and out, it all flushes down this channel, which obviously Sam got caught in. But it was just that beach, definitely an impressive beach.
Yeah, I think it'll have to be an island location. It'll have to be an island location. I don't necessarily want to see it back in Fiji. I think it's been there so many times now. I'd like for it to be somewhere else that's exciting as well. Now, we had a bunch of chats about hosts and things like that. How do you feel about the hosts having like shared responsibility? So you've got maybe more than one host doing different aspects of the game. Like you might have JLP doing the challenges, maybe Jeff's doing tribal councils and Nico's doing something else. Obviously you'll be loyal to JLP. You'd want him there because he's your boy and you've worked with him on seasons before. But how do you feel about having more of the other hosts involved as well?
I think no Jeff, but JLP for pre-merge and then Nico for post-merge.
It'd be fun.
So really quickly, if look, it'd be so. Do you know what would be so fun? Sitting at the drawing board. Yeah. As a producer, thinking of all these crazy twists and ideas, and just to get the viewers excited about everything. But imagine having it gets announced and it's JLP as the host, nothing to do with Nico. You don't hear nothing about it. But then JLP gets swapped out at merge with a handshake, and because what it does, it introduces all the Australian viewers that don't know Nico, say for instance, into it. It opens up all the Australian viewers to go, well, this is Nico. He's the host of the SA. And there's the handshake, and then JLP's like, I'll leave it with you, and then he takes over from there. And then obviously all the SA, they're like, well, it's just like another twist on top of a twist,
Well, I've just thought of a twist that would be a lot of fun and I think would muddy the waters because you mentioned it's going to be who would turn their backs first. And how do you get past, just the nationalism of wanting to get your country to win out? If they brought back what South Africa did last season with tied destinies and you are tied to a South African player or a US player for a certain part of the game, let's say like you're tied to Nicole who can second in Rob Bentelli's season
Yeah.
from South Africa.
Yeah.
David Gannat is suddenly tied to Chappies. You might want to get rid of Chappies before the merge because you don't want to go up against them. He's a challenge beast, but are you willing to turn your back on your boy David, who is now tied to Chappies? I think that could make it very interesting pre-merge, where you kind of have to think at a different level.
Dude, that's another way of looking. That's a very that's conflicting as well, because especially if the person tied to your friendship is, say for instance, gunning for you.
Yes.
Then you're like, well, you haven't been able to control your own, destiny partner, so you're both going. I think what happens is, with that situation, is it muddies the water when it comes to country versus country. Like, do we sit there and mix it up and go, oh well, it's a pre-merge swap really quickly, say for instance, and then when it does that, new alliances form very quickly, and then the Australia versus South Africa versus America lines get muddled very quickly? Or do we stick strong against whoever's I don't know what the challenge is like, but it's like whoever is the strongest and who's going to win these challenges, and you keep Australia as one, because you can see they beat South Africa in the challenge, and then it's like, and then the next challenge they beat them again, and then it's like, oh, look, Australia's walking away here, but then there's the comeback, then there's the, oh my God, South Africa's got one back, South Africa's got one back, South Everyone's got one back, and then, and then it might be just by blindsiding one of us by playing an idol, and we think we get one out. It's a lot to consider. To consider.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. I don't want to take too much of your time away. I told you 20 minutes. We've been going for 30 minutes, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about International Survivor. I can just feel the passion you have for the show. You get me excited about the fact that if a big player like yourself wants to do it, there's going to be enough other players at some point, I think, that will say, yes, I know Chappies wants to do it. I know Rob Bentelli has said he would do it in the past as well. I'm sure Dirty Harry, who watches South Africa, he'd be keen on something like that. I think there'll be big names that would come to the party.
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely interest. I don't think we don't have any, they will never have any problems with the interest. I think it's just going to be when.
Yes, and logistically.
And logistically. And in the end, we can talk things through, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we can't do. But I think that in the end, as we're players, the best thing that we can do if we sign up to say, yep, we'll do it, is give it 110, eh?
Yeah, 100%. We had, I know you said you haven't watched the challenge, but an OG challenge legend petition on Twitter for quite a long time to bring all the OGs back, and they brought an OG All-Star season back just based on that person being so vocal about wanting to make one of those seasons happen. So I think that with International Survivor, the more big players like yourself talk about it so that they're interested, I think people will get a hold of it, and at some point we'll see it play out on our screens. Luke, thank you so much for chatting with me. I'll make sure to put the links and everything in the bottom.